These extremists want to be able to choose their voters as opposed to allowing the Texas voters to choose the people who should be privileged to represent them in Washington. It's theft. That's what gerrymandering in its extreme form is.
This is a war. We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off, and I say, bring it on.
They expect us to take the punch and say thank you. Well, I am here to tell you, not only are we going to punch back, but we're about to beat you down. We're going to win.
We're at war. I don't think it's quite that extreme, but I don't know. Maybe we should ask Sean about it. Joining me now, Sean Spicer of the Great Sean Spicer Show. Sean, this is war, but what's actually happening?
Politics. That's not war. I mean, it's amazing. By the way, you see all these Texas Democrats running to political sanctuary cities, Boston, Chicago, New York. These are the new sanctuary cities. They're just political sanctuary cities. Now, there's an irony in all this, Jesse, which is that all of these same places that they're running to, New York tried to do redistricting last cycle. The court actually shut them down. Illinois has gerrymandered to no one's, to the nth degree. You look at what they've done to Maryland. There's one Republican left, Andy Harris, and he's connected by a bridge. Literally a bridge is what connects his district. It's just funny that what's good for the goose is never good for the gander. The media and the left won't tell you this, but I don't mean to sound like an 8-year-old. They started it. They did this, and they're just pissed, frankly, that Republicans are doing exactly what they've done all along. They never thought that we would actually take a play from their playbook, but that's exactly what's happened. I mean, go look at Illinois or Massachusetts or Maryland, countless other states. The bottom line is Democrats have led the way in partisan gerrymandering. And look, I'm not a huge fan of what's going on in Texas, not because I don't think that they deserve it. I'm actually more concerned about whether or not it's good in the long run for us. I think we can pick up two of the 5 seats, the Henry Cuellar seat and the Vicente seat, probably on our own. That gets us 2 without any potential repercussions. So, but that being said, just on a political basis, this idea that we're at war, if that's a war, then let's be honest, they started it.
Okay, Sean, so there's a couple things I want to dig into here. Why is Gavin Newsom getting involved and running his mouth about this? Why is Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, saying we're at war? Why is J.B. Pritzker waddling up to the microphone in Illinois defending Texas Democrats? It's a Texas thing. These are governors of states that aren't Texas. What am I missing?
Well, I think fundamentally what and you're not missing this. The bottom line is the Democratic Party is rudderless and leaderless right now. So these folks are looking for anything that they possibly can grab onto to show that they're willing to fight, right? Gavin Newsom, just to be clear, California law prohibits what he's doing. So what he's talking about is potentially going to call a special session. Kathy Hochul knows that any reform wouldn't happen for 2 to 4 years. They're just, look, they're grasping at straws, not because they'll actually do anything, right? And this is where the media is lying to us. That, number one, reminding anyone that all of these states led the way in partisan redistricting. So that's kind of a key fact. Number two, none of these states that are looking at quote unquote retaliating can actually do something in the short term. They're posturing. They're trying to, in the case of Gavin Newsom and Pritzker in particular, they think that somehow this is going to win them plaudits if they plot a presidential run. I was the guy who fought back against Texas. I'm the one who did. But the reality is, again, what no one wants to tell you, as Paul Harvey used to say, is the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is that the Democrat pushback won't actually yield any short-term results. Maybe in the long term, who knows? But the bottom line is they're just trying to posture to show that at a current state with the Democratic Party having no leaders, no one who's willing to fight, no one who's got the gumption to take on Trump, these people are looking at anything they can to say, see, I'm the person that will fight for you. It's complete nonsense.
Okay, switching gears from the redistricting thing, because you and I could nerd out on that for a very long time. What's going on with the DOJ and the voter rules, and why are Dems mad about that?
Look, I'm sure you know this from watching my show every night, but I had Harmeet Dillon on my show last night to walk. This is a civil rights thing. These states have ignored their obligation to clean up the voter rolls. And it always has amazed me. Like if you look at the states that fail to act, that fail to clean up their rolls, they're almost entirely run by Democrats. And one has to ask the obvious question, well, why wouldn't you do this unless you actually wink nod wanted to use the weakness and the sort of inaccuracies of voter rolls to your benefit somehow. And Harmeet pointed out to me that, like, look, there are several instances where people who admit that they didn't vote had a vote cast on their behalf on a voter roll. But that's why they're doing it. They have the federal government is leaning on these states that refuse to clean up their voter rolls to do what they're legally obligated to do. And I gave Harmeet this great example. When I was in the White House, I grew up in Rhode Island, and there was a story that said Spicer still registered to vote in Rhode Island. Okay, well, I hadn't since I was in college, but the Rhode Island Secretary of State had never done their job. And so it wasn't my fault. I didn't break any law. I didn't vote two states. I did what I'm supposed to. When you register to vote in a new state, in my case, Virginia, they send a note to the state that says Mr. Sean Spicer is now registered in Virginia, not Rhode Island. But why wouldn't the state of Rhode Island clean up their voter rolls? Why isn't Illinois cleaning up their voter rolls? Why aren't all of these Democratic states cleaning up their voter rolls unless one could only surmise that they had some nefarious reason for not doing it? That's the job of a Secretary of State. And when they're not doing it, you have to ask a simple question: why? And it's a pattern in now multiple states with the same thing going on. And I think Harmeet Dillon in the Department of Justice is now taking that leadership role and demanding that they do what they are legally required to do.
Sean, what's going on in North Carolina? Tom Tillis is thankfully riding off into the sunset, but now we have a very purple state and we're going to have a war here on our hands. Who are the players and who's going to win?
So you've got their former governor, Roy Cooper, running as a Democrat, and I'll be honest, it's going to be extremely formidable. He'll raise a ton of money. And now, I think, officially, former RNC chairman Michael Whatley, who had been the chairman of the state party there, very well known, very well integrated into the state party politics, is now going to be the Republican nominee. Look, Jesse, I'm going to tell you this straight up. That race, to me, is going to be the ultimate proxy fight going into these midterm elections. It's literally as even of a playing field as you can possibly ask for. The Democrats got very lucky by Roy Cooper running. He was very well liked. I think he's a big liberal, and let's face it, he'd be a proxy for Chuck Schumer. But at the end of the day, he's going to raise a ton of money. There's probably going to be upwards of billion, probably $2 billion with a B spent in North Carolina to make it a very, very competitive state. That being said, as I said, Whatley not only was the former Republican state chairman in North Carolina, but now has served, 3 years as the national party chairman, the Republican Party chairman. That's important because he's had access to a nationwide donor network that he'll be able to now call on. And he has the full backing of President Trump in getting in this race. He was President Trump's recruited candidate. So when Whatley gets in, he's going to have the backing of the Trump apparatus, the political apparatus. And by the way, and all the money that, the access to donors. Here's a key statistic that needs to be known. Right now, the RNC has just north of $83 million cash on hand. The DNC is at about 13 million. But President Trump and his super PAC have just shy of $300 million, right? So you think about and there's no such apparatus at the Democratic level to counteract that. So the Republicans mechanically and financially are going into the midterms in a much, much greater degree than the Democrats are. We're talking about a $300+ million war chest versus $13 million. That is going to give Republicans a massive, massive advantage to do voter registration, data enhancements, get out the vote efforts, advertising. And I think this is where the Roy Coopers are going to have a problem, is keeping up with that machine. Whatley is going to be someone that President Trump wants to make sure wins that race because he was the one that got him in, and he was obviously his handpicked selector to run the RNC.
All right, Sean, real quick. I understand you have a prediction for who's going to be the Republican 2028 nominee. It's J.D. Vance, right? Or Rubio or DeSantis?
No,
Who's going to be?
It's not even, I will go as far as not just saying that the nominee. I believe the next president of the United States is J.D. Vance. Right now, J.D. Vance has masterfully handled his job as vice president. He is, I mean, you talk about the not just the political piece of this, but I mentioned the finance thing. He is the first sitting vice president to serve as finance chair for the RNC. So he is literally cultivating a massive donor network before our very eyes. Last week he was in Nantucket raising over $3 million in one night. This is going to be a huge advantage for JD Vance. I think he may get some kind of nominal opposition, but I think if he continues the job he's doing right now, he may coast to the nomination.
You know what? That would work for me. I like JD. John, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.